Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we are on the dev server for update Red Skies, and it's time to have a look at the aviation element which is being added to the game in this update. Obviously Red Skies is very much based around the idea of rank 7 and also even 11.0, so why don't we start with a rank 7 vehicle. This is the F5E. It is coming to the American tree at rank 7. It's going to be after the F104, so it's not going to be after the Phantom. So make sure you have that line ground out if you want to access this vehicle early on. The F5E is a big upgrade over the other F5s that we've seen in the game, including the F5C, which is the new premium vehicle for America, and also the F5A, which is in the Chinese tech tree. It has much more powerful engines, with the J85G21As, giving it an afterburner thrust of 2,220, and also has a slightly different airframe, being generally larger. The F5E also gets access to a ton of secondary weapons, which are going to be the difference between it and many other planes. It also gets access to flares as well, in the form of flares and chaff, and gets access to the countermeasures of 45 of them, launching 2 at a time. So when we have a look at the armor profile, it doesn't exist on this plane, but with having a look at this, you can see that it still has access to the standard cannons that the other F5s have access to, and the real place where this shines is the secondary weapons. You can see here that it's able to carry bombs, rockets, missiles, air-to-airs, air-to-grounds, and even Mavericks. It can carry 4 AGM-65Bs, and AGM-65Bs are slightly different compared to the ones which we have in-game at the moment on the live server, which are the AGM-65As. They have a lot clearer screen when it comes to actually launching them, and generally should be better overall. It also gets access to a 30mm GAU-13 cannon, which I think is quite girthy, surprisingly. So if you really want to have a bit of fun with a 30mm, you can do. I'm not entirely sure you'll see that too much, but it weighs down the aircraft a hell of a lot, but it's nice to see. But the main armament of the AIM-9Js, obviously AIM-9Js are very powerful, and you only get 2 of them though, which is a bit of a problem. But alongside stuff such as the Mavericks and alongside stuff such as the bombs, you should have a really nice time in this vehicle. Overall, it's looking really good as a general vehicle, and should be great at the high tiers of America. Having access to defensive and offensive weaponry is always nice. The F5C is the premium that is coming to the game for the Americans at rank 6. You can see right here at 10.7 right now. Remember, when it comes to BRs and stuff like that, they do change before hitting the live server, so we'll have to see. The major difference between the F5C and also the F5E is the F5C gets much weaker engines, only 1430 on the afterburner thrust, and also gets much weaker secondary armaments. The F5C only gets access to AIM-9Es, where the F5E gets access to AIM-9Js, but it does get access to more flares or chaff in the form of countermeasures, and also does get access to bullpups as well, just no Mavericks. It does still get a lot of the bombs and the rockets, but the major difference in secondary is that you get a lot weaker ones for the F5C. So yeah, that's a bit of an issue, but it is still a premium and is just a little bit worse. This is also the unique camo you get by pre-ordering the vehicle itself. You can see it's very well made. It looks really nice. A big beautiful camouflage, obviously based around the one from Top Gun, the Aggressor camo. Then you have the standard camouflage, which is also incredibly nice. So whichever livery you want to run with, you'll be doing it in style with this vehicle. I also want to demonstrate something about the Mavericks, the new ones at least, just to show you what they look like, and also show that the F4E gets access to them as well in a 4 configuration. So if you are worried about missing out if you don't grind out the new vehicles, well, don't worry. You know, the F4E, which is known for its secondary armaments in the game and having a ton of different ones, gets them in troves when it comes to the new mechanics coming. So we'll just get up in the air and show you how they work. And then obviously you have the wonderful flares of the F4E as well. You don't seem to be able to bring the Mavericks with anything else, so you will just be limited on the amount of ordnance that you can bring. But generally with this armament, you are looking just to be a complete nuisance when it comes to ground. You still have all of the the bomb CCIP and stuff in the Phantom, so therefore it's just going to be very easy to bomb targets, but just the main thing, at least for me, looking at it, comparing the 65As to 65Bs, is the 65Bs have a much clearer look at the actual screen that they have. So this one here, you can see it's much more clearer, much more easier to look at targets, but at the same time, you still can't target stuff at night. You still are limited to the conditions that you fight in. So yeah, just a slightly better version. They may have a little bit longer range as well, but at least on the stat card, that is not true right now. The Germans also get access to a new machine in the form of a Phantom, the F4F late, or just the standard F4F as it's called here. The reason why a lot of people talk about it being late is because, well, you have the early, which is of course the vehicle that was available in the most recent Build-A-Bear event. But the F4F gets access to a bunch of different stuff compared to the early. It gets access to countermeasures and also gets access to, once again, the AGMs. It only gets 2 of them though. So not as powerful as the F4E in that regard, but still very good at dealing with a lot of targets on the ground. The F4F also gets access to the bombing computer and the rocket computer, and also all of those features, and it also gets access to AIM-9Js alongside everything here as well. So for me personally, I think that it still should be really, really good in ground. It gets access to the gun pods as well. So the only thing it's really limited by is the amount of Mavericks it gets. It is a very good vehicle, just like the F4E that you find in the American tech tree, and also the F4EJ that you find in the Japanese one. It is also a new rank 7 German vehicle. So it isn't just going to be a vehicle which is at rank 6, so you'll need to use rank 6s to research it, and that shouldn't be too bad though, since it has, you know, quite a lot of pretty good vehicles at rank 6 to have a look at. So just to show you the bombing computer, you can see it's still here, so you don't have to worry about losing that. When it comes to the German version, it also has the countermeasures as well, so there's not much difference between it and the F4E. I'm sure there'll be minor differences here and there, but the general usage of the vehicles will be basically the same. So yeah, it's nice to see. Oh, it doesn't get access to Sparrows. That's another thing to remember. It doesn't get access to semi-active radar homing missiles. It only gets access to the air-to-air IR-guided missiles. So that is a change between them as well. I forgot to mention that. The USSR actually get a bunch of new stuff. And the first one actually comes in the form of the Yak-9K. And the Yak-9K for the longest time has only had access with its big old 45mm. It's only had access to HE, meaning that it's very much been stuck in a realistic limbo, not really being that useful in ground realistic. And now, with the access to the offensive 45mm belt, you now have the armored targets belt, which pens 63, 54, 24 across the board. So now you can bring this thing to ground forces and do a lot of really good work with it. It's basically just a Yak-9T with a slightly more inaccurate gun, but a much larger shell that you're firing at the enemy. The new vehicle, which is also coming in the form of the premium, is the SU-7 BKM. This is a rank 6 battle rating 9.7 vehicle, very similar to the SU-7s that we have in the game, the B and also the BKL. Let's just change that to ground realistic. And the BKM has access to no missiles, but a decent amount of rockets and also bombs. I believe it still has the same computer systems as the standard SU-7B, so you'll be able to aim them a lot easier. Gets also access to two 30mm NR30s, which are sat in the vehicle, and a huge engine in the form of the Saturn AL7F1250 with an 8,260 kgf afterburning thrust, which is very, very powerful. It is also labeled a strike aircraft, so again air-spawn in aerialistic, which means that it's quite hard to deal with since it can be across the map in pretty much seconds. And also customization wise, the camos that are available, this is the standard one. Then you also have the tricolor camouflage, which looks like this, which I think is beautiful. And then also the tricolor Indian camouflage, which is also lovely to see. And then we have the bicolor camouflage as well, and also the unicolor camouflage, which just makes it white, or well, sorry, silver. So you can disguise yourself as a Soviet vehicle, you can rep the Indian camouflage, you can try a bunch of different things. They all look really nice, so that's really good to see. And then of course we have the Yak-28B. This is a new jet bomber which is coming to the game for the Soviets. It doesn't have the best of bomb loads, but what it does is it has access to some features we haven't really seen in bombers before. So this thing gets access to flares, or well, apart from the Buccaneer I suppose, but it has some unique stuff on it as well. The Yak-28 gets access to flares and chaff, so 64 of them a piece, which is really good. It also gets access to afterburning engines, 5,230 kgf afterburning thrust, which is very nice to see. It's also made of a ton of fuel, and then when you have a look at the bomb loads, they don't really improve from some of the previous machines. So you have 100 kilo bombs, 3,000, 250, 1,500, and also 500 kilo bombs, which are around the place as well. It does get access to a gun, 123mm, but it only has 50 rounds of ammunition, so it's not going to be very useful. Maybe in a bit of a head-on sense, or maybe just cleaning up some ground targets at the end, and that's really about it. It does have quite a lot of armor on the front though, basically the seats, and then a little bit of 6 and 90mm of bulletproof glass. So overall, a very interesting plane and a very nice one to see, and it also means that it makes the Tu-14T much easier to grind, since it's no longer an end-of-the-line vehicle. Then we have the big one, the MiG-23M. This is the variable wing machine that is coming to the USSR tech tree, and it is going to be rank 7 11.0, the first 11.0 vehicle in the game. It's coming after the MiG-21 BIS right here, and it has access to the GSH-23L 23mm, which is mounted in the center of the aircraft right here. It has 200 rounds of ammunition, which is really nice, and then also it gets access to some really cool weaponry on the machine as well. Basically, you do have some flares and chaff, but you only get access to 12 of them, so you're going to have to use them incredibly sparingly in general. And it also, the missiles it gets access to are really interesting. So you have the standard R60s, which are obviously very powerful. You can bring 6 of them if you want, which is incredibly similar to the MiG-21 BIS. Then you have R3Ss and R13Ms, which are all obviously the IR guided stuff. And then you get these. So you got the R23Ts and the R23Rs. So the R23Ts are actually IR guided all aspect missiles. So these are huge missiles which have a very fast speed on them and a big launch range, but but you have to get very close to the target to actually be able to lock them on. As you can see, weapon lock range in all aspect is 1.3 kilometers, and also rear aspect is 6 kilometers. So definitely not as good as the R60s in that regard. But they do have the all aspect IR lock. It's just you have to get very close to the target, and they don't have a great maximum overload compared to a bunch of other missiles. These are very much shotgun style missiles. The R-23Rs are radar guided ones, so if you want the mixture of radar guided missiles and IR ones, you bring the R-60s and the R-23Rs. These have a maximum overload of 16 Gs. They also have a long launch range and a very fast speed as well. So this thing gets some unique armament compared to some of the other machines that are in game, but I don't think it'll be that useful compared to what we already have. And also it gets the KH-23Ms, which are the big old AGMs that it gets, and these are very, very good if you can use them properly. Generally, the MiG-23M is coming in as a very fast plane with access to some really good missiles. It should be a good counter to the Phantom, and I look forward to seeing how people actually fight it on either side. Really, really interesting plane. I'm very happy to see it. The next one is for Britain, and it is the Sea Vixen, and the Sea Vixen is coming into game, costing around about 8,560 GE. This is going to be a rank 5 vehicle, so it's going to be good at researching rank 6, 5 and below, but not the rank 7s. That is actually going to be down to the Harrier GR1 that you see right here. Then the Sea Vixen FAW Mark II is special. It doesn't have any guns. This is actually a vehicle that completely relies on its suspended weaponry to get the job done. It has a crew of 2. It pretty much has the radar man and then the pilot. It has access to the Rolls-Royce Avon Mark 208 and also the twin boom at the back, which is really nice. The secondary weapons that you get are actually very powerful for 8.3. You know, you can get bullpups, then also red tops, which are the missiles that you find on the Lightning right now, and then the fire streaks, which you find on the Javelin. Then, if you want, you can bring along some RP3s, or even some RN rockets, plus some bombs if you feel like it either. But I think most people are just going to go for the 4 missiles, or they're going to go for the 2 AGMs, plus the missiles on top of it. The problem with having only a missile armament, though, is you have 4 stabs at it, and if they all go wrong, especially against quite a lot of maneuverable aircraft, which you'll find at around the 8.3 BR, then you have to go home and rearm. You don't really have a choice to stick around unless you feel like kamikaze is the way to go. The FAW2 is nice to see in the game, and it does have very high rewards on it, so that will be really nice to get things going. Hopefully a bunch of people play it and have fun in it. I think I'll do the same thing. When it comes to Japan are getting a premium P51C. This is 1600 GE right now, has a lovely skin on it, and it is just like the standard P51C, but doesn't get access to any secondary weaponry. So it gets access to the 12.7 M2s. It has late war 50 cals, so running APIT with the tracer belt means that you can set everything on fire and it's very easy to hit shots, but it doesn't get access to any bombs or anything like that, so this is a pure fighter in that regard. And at rank 3, that means you can research all the rank 4 and below. There are some really good options for Japanese premiums, and this kind of just adds to them. It has a very unique skin, looks lovely, and really, really good to see, but no real difference between it and the other P51C that we see in the game. The Chinese get access to the J7E, and the J7E is a double delta wing machine. This is a supersonic aircraft which is designed way more for dogfighting than anything else, which is really, really cool. It also gets access to some new missiles, the PL-5Bs. These are very good in the form of being able to turn on a target, 16G maximum overload, maximum speed is 2.2 Mach, and also the lock-on of 5.5. I've launched them at about 4 kilometers so far, and it's been very, very good. It also gets access to flares, which is awesome. 72 in total is very nice to have. And also the PL2s are rank 2 now, so it means even if you don't get too high in the ranks when it comes to modifications, you'll still have some kind of missile armament. But until you get there, you got a bit of a problem with this machine. This thing only has one 30mm and it has access to 60 rounds. So the pretty much the similar weaponry of a MiG-21 F-13, which makes it very hard to stock grind, and this is going to have the same problem. It does have the Shenyang Liming WP7F jet engine though, with a 7070 kgf thrust, which is really nice, and a little bit of a gun targeting radar as well in the front of it. So lovely to see the plane. Hopefully people really enjoy it. It has positives and negatives, but that stock grind is going to be really, really rough for it. The Italians get a jet also in the form of the 8.3 Sagittario II. This is a little jet and gets access to two 30mm in the sides right here. You can see how long the barrel is of these HS-825s, and it gets access to 240 rounds of ammunition, very much enough to be able to deal with everything. It also gets access to ground belts, default, and also air targets. These are very similar to DEFAs that you find from other machines, so if you want a comparison, it's pretty close to that. It doesn't have access to any bombs or rockets or anything like that, and also if you have a look at the engine, it's mounted a little bit weirdly, which is very, very odd. The General Electric J47G13 with 1500 kgf and takeoff thrust means that this little machine can fly about the air and have a little bit of fun with it. It does have a little bit of armor as well, with some bulletproof glass, but I think overall it's a pretty nice little nippy machine. My guess is it'll be very similar to like the Yak-23 in its playstyle, which I personally find incredibly fun. And then for the French, we actually have the MD-4544A. This is a jet fighter, but it's more of a multi-role machine, kind of like the Baroujon, where it has access to a bunch of secondary armaments that I think is where it will actually find its use. So it has the 500-pound bombs, the 1,000 pounds, a bunch of different rockets, and also the AA-20 Nords. So these are the air proximity Nords, which are keyboard guided, so they are pretty fun, or M-close is what they're known as, and generally, a lot of people have a ton of fun with these things. For me personally, I've never really been able to get them to work very well, but that is probably my downfall. It does get access to two 30mm DEFAs as well, so it'll be able to do a ton of damage, not just to air vehicles, but also to ground vehicles with the amount of penetration that it has, and also it gets access to stealth and ground targets, just to give it that extra oomph as well. When you find it in the tech tree, the place where it's actually sat is between the MD-4522C and also the Super Mystère. So if you're getting the Super Mystère or want the Mirage, understand that this vehicle is going to get put in the way, so it might be an idea to research through the Super Mystère first. And then, as a last thing, Sweden is getting a BF-109 G6. This is 4,880 GE for the premium. It is a Finnish BF-109 G6. The Finnish used these in World War II along with a bunch of other variants of the G, and it's the first rank 4 premium that the Swedish get access to. So at 4.7, it's exactly the same as the one in the German tech tree, so it gets access to the secondary weapons, the 30mm and the 20mm. It also gets access to the rockets and also a 250 kilo bomb, so it can be useful in air and also useful in ground. But if you want to know its stats, you can find it in the German territory right now on the live server. The skin is cool though, really happy to see the skin, looks awesome, so that's great too. Anyway, that is all of the aircraft which are coming to the game in Update Red Skies from the first dev server. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd like to thank BRFC, Swollen Ostrich, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Conte Baraka, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Lafouche, Barine, and Samuel Schlick for supporting the channel.